Yo guys, what is up? It's your boy KRATOZNIZMO back at you again with another one of these videos where I'm addressing a problem of the mechanics of the game or sharing some tips and tricks of you guys I've learned throughout the years or recently of playing Gears of War. So, this video isn't negative, so before we get into it, I don't really want it to come across like I'm complaining or, ranting about the game. This is just like my other video, the one that got patched. Well, kinda got patched. They did manage to patch the exploit to do with the zoom in function where you could shoot through the wall, but you can actually still abuse the aim assist feature and you can still backpack with it. So, I mean, at least they patched the most annoying part of it. So hopefully this video, I'm going to address some tips for you guys and tricks that you can use while playing on alternate control scheme. I've seen a lot of you guys ask me, why can't I bounce at the wall between this distance and this distance? The distance feels shorter and so on. So, I'm going to help you with those things today if you don't already know. If you do know, that's great. But if not, you learn something new. But there's also an issue with the alternate control scheme that I've known about since probably Gears 3. I've never really wanted to address it because I thought nothing would get done about it. But, as they have shown, they do fix things. I'm kind of hoping maybe this will reach them or, so that something will get done about it. But without further ado, I'm going to take you guys into alternate itself. I mean, you guys probably already know what alternate is, but I'm just going to explain it to you real quick, and then we'll move on to the tricks and address the issue later on. So real quick, all alternate really does, it just splits the load default has to deal with where it runs and bounces on the same button. So in my case, I'm playing on classic alt right here. It just makes my X button roadie run and roll, and it makes my A button slide. So it's just splitting the load. It's just basically the same thing but two different buttons. And the same for PC. If you're on PC using keyboard and mouse, you're just binding, you have obviously more options. You're just binding your roadie run evade to one key and your bounce / slide to another key. Alright guys, so for the sake of the video, I got a little keyboard emulator here on my screen to show you what I'm doing. You just got to imagine the O button is the A button on your controller and my space bar is your X key. So don't get confused, this isn't just for PC only, it's just I recorded it on my PC because it's easier. You just got to imagine, like I said, O is A and space bar is X. And obviously WASD keys are your up, down, left, right on your analog. So as you see on the screen now, I can imagine this is what you guys are probably struggling with the most. As you can see on the little keyboard emulator, I'm only spamming O, which is my A button at the time. So I'm spamming it super fast, and it almost feels like I'm not going anywhere. It feels like I'm moving at super slow speeds compared to someone bouncing on default. It just feels like my game is not registering my inputs, where in fact it actually is registering your inputs. Alternate, it just works very differently to default, where I feel like this is where it's broken in a sense, where the alternate doesn't have the spring that default has, and I'll explain that in a second. So as you can see here again, still there's no way to kind of get that spring in your bounce. There's no way to get that maximum distance that you should be able to achieve when bouncing on default, for example. So I'm going to show you now the way I've done it since probably Gears Judgment, and this way works really well for alternate. So you probably can already tell just by looking at the screen. So based on the emulator, all I'm doing is I'm just pressing my space bar, which is aka my X button, my run roadie button, and I'm kind of matching that to a similar speed. I'm pressing the A button, my O button, so my bounce button. So I'm just combining the buttons at the same time as I press them. So I'm pressing bounce and then roadie run. And for some reason, when you do this on alternate, I can't really explain why. All I really think it is as you're like holding the X button down slightly as you press A, you're sort of adding that spring to your bounce that default has. And that's what kind of allows you to reach the maximum distance. You can bounce just as fast as someone can on default. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, what's the point of that then? Because all you're really doing is making it default with two buttons, which is technically more annoying because now you're going to still roll like you can on default and you're going to have two buttons to use at the same time. And that's true to a degree, but as you're kind of pressing the X button after you're pressing your bounce button, your A button, it cancels out the roll. So you'll notice, as long as you've got the right distance between the walls, which will probably be 90% of the time, you're not going to be rolling. You're going to roll very, very rarely compared to on default. I guarantee you, if you master this and then you try and do the same thing on default, you're going to roll a lot more, just for the fact that you're spamming the A buttons. So the game's going to come to a point where it doesn't register the input between two different walls. So in simpler terms, you're just going to end up misrolling, because the game was like 1 millisecond away from saying, oh yeah, you could bounce to that wall, but you was just that one step away. And this is where I feel like Alternate nails it, where it actually prevents this from happening a lot more often than it does on default. Now, this is the thing I hate about Alternate the most. Whether this was an intentional bug or whether it wasn't, I really think this shouldn't be in the game for an Alternate player. So I want you guys to imagine there's someone on that spot that I just shot right there. And for tutorial's sake, I'm actually playing on default in this moment. So you guys probably didn't catch that right there, but in slow motion you can see halfway from getting up from a miss roll, I was actually able to take cover on the wall. So I'm halfway up from my roll and I still took cover and was able to pull off a back A, which is kind of OP. And now this is on Alternate, obviously an actual miss roll. And then look at this. I have to wait a whole second after standing up before I can retake cover on the wall in any direction. And this is everywhere on the map, guys. Any map, it doesn't matter what team you're on, Cog, Locust. There's not an actual term for this. Like, I don't think anyone's really ever addressed this. So I'm probably going to go with calling this some form of roll recovery. As you can see, halfway through the roll, you can recover and then retake your actual natural position back on the piece of cover you was initially aiming for. And Alternate completely disregards that. It's like the input is not registered for a whole second after coming back up off your roll. You can see here some more clips just randomly misrolling across the map on default. And then if I try and, misroll purposely on Alternate, again, on any piece of cover, you can see that this actually, again, it's still taking a certain amount of time from which I'm actually able to take cover. And you can imagine, like, if you're being lanced at across the map, or you're trying to evade Lancer bullets, trying to evade a sniper shot, someone behind you with the shotgun, you're gonna have a really bad time. So I know the whole point of Alternate is not to misroll, but nobody's perfect. You're gonna end up rolling. You're gonna end up making mistakes. Every Gears of War player makes mistakes, and you're gonna be in those situations where that happens. And default will always have that over Alternate. Again, I don't know if it's purposely put in the game, or whether they didn't mean it, but I don't think the argument should be Alternate's this godly control scheme, so if the workload is split into two, you should have that disadvantage, otherwise it's unfair on default. It's not, dude. There's some beast default players that barely ever misroll, and when they do, they have that feature there to back them up, and I really honestly think Alternate should have that. But I don't really have anything else to say on this, guys. Like, leave me some comments, tell me what you think of that, tell me if I helped you with Alternate, if you knew about, what I showed you today. But yeah, be sure, if you didn't understand everything I said, you had some complications with doing this yourself, just like I said, leave me a comment, give me some feedback, let me know what you think, and like I said, ask me any problems you have regarding this in the comment section. But until the next video, guys, I will catch you on that one, and thank you for watching.